The moment the P-51 Mustangs roared into the sky over Berlin, slicing through the morning haze with a speed and grace that seemed almost supernatural, the Luftwaffe commanders and pilots could hardly believe their eyes, for the reports filtering in from radar and reconnaissance planes painted a scenario that defied logic and experience. American fighters, fully armed and fueled, had crossed a staggering 1,650 miles from England to the heart of Germany, bypassing layers of anti-aircraft defenses, and now they were engaging German air forces in a calculated, devastating strike. And the suspense for anyone witnessing the scene is immediate and gripping because this was not merely a tactical mission. It was a revelation of engineering, endurance, and strategic audacity. As the Mustang's fuel capacity, aerodynamic efficiency, and pilot discipline combined to create a scenario no German officer could have anticipated, and as the first wave of 80 Luftwaffe fighters scrambled to intercept, the Americans' surprise and speed made them nearly untouchable, a ghostly force appearing over Berlin with lethal precision. And the pilots, trained to exploit every advantage, felt the thrill of disbelief mix with the tension of combat, knowing that history was unfolding in real time above a city that had long assumed itself secure from such a bold incursion. While the camera or narrator threads suspense into every detail, from the glinting wings reflecting the morning sun to the roar of Merlin engines pushing the P-51s beyond previously imagined limits, and as the German formations faltered, disorganized by the sudden appearance of these distant-reaching fighters, the audience is drawn into the unfolding drama, understanding that what they are witnessing is not just air combat, but a paradigm shift in warfare, endurance and strategy, and every maneuver, every evasive dive, every calculated pass over flak-laden streets becomes a pulse-pounding demonstration of audacity, engineering genius, and human courage, and in that first minute, the story hooks the viewer with tension, spectacle, and the promise that what follows will unravel the shocking full scale of the Mustang's operational range, the destruction wrought on the Luftwaffe, and the extraordinary decisions that allowed 80 German fighters to be decimated in a single day, forever altering the balance of air power in the European theater. As the Mustangs streaked across the sky, their engines singing with a ferocity and precision that only the most advanced aircraft of the era could achieve, German radar operators scrambled to comprehend the unprecedented situation. Reports of high-altitude incursions came in fragmented, sometimes contradictory bursts, yet all pointed to the same terrifying truth. These fighters had traversed 1,650 miles, a feat thought impossible for single-engine aircraft, and now they were over Berlin, executing attack runs with cold, calculated efficiency, and every second of the engagement intensified the tension for both the pilots and the audience. Because what unfolded in the skies above the German capital was nothing short of tactical genius paired with raw mechanical endurance, a combination that the Luftwaffe had never anticipated. And the suspense grows as the American pilots, cognizant of the distance already traveled and the risks inherent in every maneuver, engaged their targets with precision, picking apart formations of fighters, disrupting bombing runs, and creating chaos that would resonate for hours on the ground below. Engineers and strategists in the American command had long theorized about the P-51's extended range when equipped with drop tanks, but no simulation, no war game, and no intelligence report could prepare the Luftwaffe for the reality of 80 fighters descending on Berlin in perfect coordination, each Mustang exploiting altitude, speed, and maneuverability to devastating effect, while German pilots, caught off guard by the sheer audacity of the incursion, struggled to regroup, communicate, and mount a coherent defense. And this interplay of surprise, skill, and endurance forms the foundation of suspense for the viewer, because it demonstrates that warfare is not only about numbers but also about engineering, preparation, and daring execution. And as the Mustangs engaged in precise dogfights, strafing runs, and coordinated passes, the air above Berlin became a theater of almost cinematic tension, where every maneuver carried the weight of history, every barrel roll, dive, or climb held the possibility of victory or disaster, and the audience is invited to feel the pulse-pounding reality of the engagement. to witness a turning point in aerial warfare where technology and strategy converged in the skies above a city that had long considered itself untouchable. The narrative deepens as the story explores the pilot's mental state, fatigue from the long 1,750-mile journey mixed with adrenaline, strategic focus meshing with instinct, and a sense of purpose that transcended fear. And for viewers, this heightens engagement because they are not merely watching mechanical feats, but human courage tested to the utmost, where split-second decisions determine the survival of both men and machines, and where the interplay of endurance, skill, and surprise underscores why the Luftwaffe could neither predict nor counter such an operation. Close-ups of cockpit instruments, the steady hand of pilots adjusting throttle and stick, and the glint of sunlight off the Mustang's canopy all serve to immerse the audience, while narration threads historical and technical insights seamlessly into the unfolding suspense, explaining how fuel management, drop tank jettisoning, and engine performance enabled such a deep penetration into enemy territory. As the dogfights reached their climax over Berlin, the scale of destruction became apparent. Luftwaffe fighters caught between attack vectors, superior enemy aircraft, and their own confusion, were systematically eliminated, 80 losses recorded in a single day. A shock to the German command that reverberated across strategic discussions and morale alike. And the suspense for viewers is heightened as each loss is framed not just as a statistic, but as part of a dramatic unfolding narrative, emphasizing the deadly efficiency of the P-51s and the audacity of the operation that had carried them so far beyond their home bases. Tactical diagrams, flight paths, and pilot accounts are woven into the narrative to give depth and realism, allowing the audience to understand not only what happened but why it was possible, linking engineering innovation with battlefield outcomes in a way that reinforces the drama and maintains engagement. By late afternoon, as the Mustangs began their return flight, the tension shifts to endurance and suspense for a different reason: fuel levels, weather conditions, enemy anti-aircraft fire, and the sheer strain of continuous flight created a nerve-wracking backdrop to what had already been a historic engagement. And the audience experiences a dual-layered tension, first in the destruction wrought over Berlin, and now in the nerve-wracking calculation of whether the fighters would return safely to England after having pushed every technical and human limit imaginable. And the narrative emphasizes that the P-51's 1,650-mile range was not merely a statistic, but a transformative capability that altered both operational planning and the psychological landscape of aerial warfare. Finally, as dusk fell and the returning Mustangs touched down, exhausted but victorious, the full scope of the mission's audacity became clear. Germany had faced an operation that seemed impossible, and yet the combination of pilot skill, engineering excellence, and daring execution had produced results that shocked both the enemy and the Allies themselves, and for the audience. The suspense is sustained to the very last moment through cinematic description of exhausted pilots climbing out of cockpits, mission logs being compiled, and commanders realizing that air superiority and reach had just been fundamentally redefined, leaving a dramatic hook that sets the stage for Point 2, where the narrative will explore the technical engineering behind the P-51's extraordinary range, fuel capacity, and endurance, revealing why this aircraft became a strategic nightmare for the Luftwaffe and a symbol of American ingenuity and audacity. As the P-51s streaked back over the patchwork fields and winding rivers of Germany, their engines whining in precise harmony, the enormity of the mission began to crystallize for both the pilots and the audience alike, because what had started as a tactical raid had transformed into a demonstration of endurance, precision, and technological supremacy. And each second of flight carried the weight of decisions made hundreds of miles away at command centers in England and Washington. Decisions that had relied on meticulous planning, weather analysis, and a faith in the Mustang's extraordinary performance envelope, which now, in real time, was being proven to the Luftwaffe in the most undeniable terms possible. The suspense for viewers deepens because they are witnessing not only the destruction of enemy forces, but the unfolding of a logistical and engineering marvel that would redefine aerial operations across the European theater. Inside the cockpits, pilots managed fuel, navigation, and communication with razor-sharp focus, constantly calculating remaining endurance, alternate landing strips, and potential threats from flak or enemy fighters still patrolling the skies. Every glance at a fuel gauge, every adjustment of throttle, and every turn in formation carried the tension of life or death. And the narrative immerses the audience in this high-stakes environment, allowing them to feel the pulse of the mission through the sensory details of rumbling engines, the shudder of wings in turbulent air, and the glinting of sunlight off aluminum surfaces, reminding viewers that the P-51's unprecedented 1,650-mile range was not theoretical but operational, real, and profoundly consequential. As the American formation approached Berlin during the peak of their offensive, the coordination of hundreds of miles of flight became a masterclass in aeronautical strategy. Pilots maintained precise spacing, altitude separation, and vectoring to maximize fuel efficiency while minimizing exposure to enemy fighters and anti-aircraft artillery. And the suspense intensifies for the viewer because every maneuver represents the culmination of human skill, mechanical reliability, and tactical planning, with the slightest miscalculation potentially leading to disaster far from home bases. And yet the Mustangs moved like a phalanx of precision instruments, guided by engineers' calculations and pilots' instincts, a lethal ballet of technology and human performance that Germany had not anticipated. The Luftwaffe's response, hasty and desperate, revealed the scale of the American audacity. Fighters scrambled to intercept, flak batteries fired at angles barely within range, and yet the P-51s, using altitude advantage and superior speed, executed attack runs that neutralized German formations with methodical efficiency, downing 80 fighters in a single day. And the cinematic tension for the audience escalates as the narration emphasizes the surreal nature of this achievement, showing both the chaos among German pilots and the calm, disciplined execution of the Americans, creating a narrative contrast that underscores audacity, strategy, and human courage in a single, continuous action. Simultaneously, behind the scenes at American command centers, intelligence officers and strategists tracked the mission in real time, updating maps, calculating fuel usage, predicting enemy response, and relaying new orders to ensure that every Mustang remained on course, fully aware that even with 1,750 miles of range, a single miscalculation in fuel or navigation could transform triumph into catastrophe. This dual layer of suspense, above the skies and within the command centers, immerses the audience in a multi-dimensional narrative where engineering, logistics, and human skill converge, and where the full impact of the P-51's range becomes both a tactical revelation and a story of audacious execution against all odds. As the mission unfolded hour by hour, the implications of the P-51's range became increasingly clear. These fighters could escort bombers deep into German territory, engage enemy aircraft, strike at strategic targets, and return safely, all while preserving operational readiness for subsequent sorties, a capability previously unimaginable for single-engine fighters. And the suspense for the audience is sustained by the realization that the Luftwaffe had been fundamentally outmaneuvered, caught off guard not by numbers alone, but by an intersection of engineering brilliance, pilot skill, and daring strategy, a combination that redefined the dynamics of air warfare over Europe. By late afternoon, as the sun dipped low on the horizon, the returning P-51s faced the final challenge: endurance and fatigue, both mechanical and human. Engines strained, fuel gauges low, and pilots' eyes heavy from hours of concentration. Yet each aircraft touched down safely, their crews exhilarated, exhausted, and fully aware that they had participated in a historic mission that would resonate through the ranks of both Allied and Axis forces. And the narrative thread for viewers emphasizes not just the destruction wrought, but the meticulous preparation, engineering insight, and human mastery that allowed 80 Luftwaffe fighters to be destroyed in a single day, solidifying the Mustang's legacy as a transformative weapon of war and leaving an indelible impression of suspense, awe, and engagement that carries through to the next point. where the technical genius behind the aircraft's range and endurance will be explored in full cinematic detail. As the evening shadows stretched across the airfield and the last Mustangs completed their return flight, the scale of what had just occurred began to sink in for both pilots and ground crews, because they were not merely recounting victories in the air, but documenting a strategic turning point in the war, a moment when engineering brilliance, endurance, and audacity combined to deliver an outcome that defied expectation, shocked the enemy, and rewrote the playbook for air operations over Europe. Every logbook entry, every maintenance check, every pilot debrief became part of an unfolding narrative that emphasized the Mustang's extraordinary 1,650-mile range, its capacity to penetrate deeply into enemy territory, and the human skill required to maximize its potential. And the suspense for viewers is heightened as they witness the interplay between aircraft capability and tactical genius, understanding that what seemed like a simple mission was in fact a meticulously orchestrated operation that leveraged every advantage of technology, strategy, and courage. Inside the command centers, intelligence officers and strategists pored over radar reports, mission data, and pilot debriefs, piecing together a comprehensive picture of how 80 Luftwaffe fighters had been decimated over Berlin in a single day, and as they reconstructed flight paths, attack sequences, and engagement maneuvers, the story for the audience deepened. The P-51s' range had made it possible to strike the heart of Germany with unprecedented surprise, speed, and effectiveness. And the tension was palpable because this capability was invisible until it was tested in the crucible of combat, and now its implications for the remainder of the air war were being realized in real time. The narrative then pivots to the human element of endurance. Pilots who had flown nearly 1,650 miles, engaged in deadly combat, and returned safely were physically drained, mentally strained, yet exhilarated by the success and clarity of their mission. Their hands were blistered on the throttle, eyes strained from hours of scanning for enemy aircraft, and every decision in the cockpit carried life-or-death consequences, and for the audience, this combination of human skill and mechanical prowess elevates the suspense, as viewers are invited to imagine the mental and physical demands of a mission that was both extraordinary in distance and unprecedented in strategic impact, with every maneuver reflecting hours of preparation and instinct honed through training and experience. Technically, the P-51's design becomes the focal point of the story, its Rolls-Royce Merlin engine providing sustained power over extreme distances, aerodynamic efficiency allowing high-speed flight at varying altitudes, drop tanks enabling deep penetration into enemy airspace, and the lightweight yet robust airframe balancing performance and durability, all of which converge to make a single sortie capable of staggering operational outcomes, including the destruction of 80 German fighters in one engagement. And the narrative emphasizes for viewers that this was not luck nor mere chance, but the intersection of thoughtful engineering and bold tactical planning, a lesson in both audacity and precision. As the pilots debriefed, the Luftwaffe's response, slow, fragmented, and disorganized, was reconstructed for the audience, highlighting how surprise, strategic misjudgment, and the Mustang's technical advantages created a cascading effect of confusion and defeat. The tension builds as the camera and narration take viewers into the heart of the chaos. Enemy formations disintegrating under pressure, communication breakdowns exacerbating losses, and the Americans exploiting every advantage, painting a cinematic portrait of air combat where engineering mastery meets human courage. And the consequences of range, speed, and strategy are made visually and emotionally compelling. Finally, as night fell over the English airfields and the exhausted pilots filed reports, maintenance crews prepared the Mustangs for the next day, and the audience is left with a layered sense of awe and suspense. The 1,650-mile range had not only enabled the destruction of 80 Luftwaffe fighters, but had also redefined air power, morale, and operational thinking, leaving Germany stunned and the Allies emboldened. And the narrative closes this block by threading together technical marvel, human endurance, and strategic audacity, setting the stage for point 2, which will delve into the precise engineering, fuel management, and aerodynamic breakthroughs that made this unprecedented range possible, deepening viewer engagement and sustaining suspense for the remainder of the video. As the night deepened over the English airfields, the P-51 Mustangs rested silently on the tarmac, their polished fuselages gleaming under floodlights. Yet the air was thick with the energy and tension of what had just transpired. Pilots walked among their aircraft, mentally replaying every maneuver, every throttle adjustment, and every split-second decision that had brought them from England to the heart of Berlin and back. And for the audience, this moment is an immersive study in the interplay between human skill and technological mastery, because every mile flown over hostile territory had demanded precision, courage, and endurance that pushed both men and machines to their absolute limits. The technical marvel of the Mustang became more apparent as engineers and ground crews recounted the details. How the aircraft's laminar flow wings reduced drag, increasing fuel efficiency and allowing extended range. How the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine maintained peak performance over sustained long-distance flight without overheating. And how drop tanks, jettisoned at the optimal moment, provided the crucial extra fuel necessary to reach Berlin and return safely. The suspense heightens as viewers understand that each design feature, each mechanical innovation, was not theoretical but proven in the crucible of combat, enabling the very mission that had shattered German expectations and destroyed 80 Luftwaffe fighters in a single day. Inside the cockpit, pilots navigated a complex ballet of endurance and combat, monitoring fuel levels, adjusting mixture controls, maintaining formation, scanning for enemy fighters, and anticipating anti-aircraft fire, all while making instantaneous tactical decisions. Every movement was critical, and the narrative tension is amplified by the understanding that a miscalculation of fuel, a delay in dropping a tank, or a misjudged maneuver could have resulted in disaster hundreds of miles from safety, turning the aircraft's extraordinary range into a deadly liability. Yet the Mustang's combination of engineering, pilot skill, and strategic planning transformed potential vulnerability into lethal advantage, a paradox that fascinates viewers and sustains engagement. The Luftwaffe's perspective adds a dramatic counterpoint. German pilots, scrambled at the first reports of incoming Mustangs, were unprepared for both the distance and the precision of the attack, and the audience experiences the full shock of the engagement as formations faltered. Commands were delayed, and panic rippled through the skies above Berlin. The cinematic tension escalates as narration and visuals illustrate how the Americans exploited speed, altitude, and tactical cohesion, systematically dismantling German fighter units while minimizing their own losses. And the destruction of 80 fighters in a single day becomes not just a statistic, but a narrative moment of awe, strategy, and suspense. As the Mustangs pressed their advantage, their range allowed them to dictate the terms of engagement, choosing when and where to strike, retreating to safe altitudes for refueling, and executing repeated passes with precision that left the Luftwaffe struggling to respond effectively. The narrative emphasizes that the 1,650-mile range was more than an engineering feat. It was a strategic multiplier that transformed every decision in the air into a calculated and often lethal gamble, keeping viewers on edge and fully immersed in the unfolding drama. By dawn, when the final Mustangs touched down, pilots were physically exhausted but exhilarated. Engineers were already analyzing performance data, and Allied commanders recognized the operation as a historic demonstration of air power and strategic innovation. The suspense for viewers is compounded by the dual narrative, the pilot's human experience of endurance, fatigue, and precision, and the mechanical and strategic mastery that made the mission possible, merging technical detail, historical significance, and cinematic storytelling into a seamless, tension-filled sequence. Finally, as logbooks were filled and maintenance checks completed, the audience is left with the lingering sense of awe. The P-51's extraordinary range had enabled a single operation to devastate the Luftwaffe, surprise Berlin, and demonstrate the lethal synergy of engineering and human skill, creating a narrative hook that promises even deeper revelations in Point 2, where the precise aerodynamics, fuel management, and engineering ingenuity behind the Mustang's performance will be explored in exhaustive detail, sustaining suspense and engagement as the story progresses. With the night fully enveloping the airfield, the after-action analysis began in earnest, and pilots, engineers, and strategists pored over every detail of the mission, dissecting flight logs, altitudes, fuel consumption, engine performance, and engagement sequences. And for the audience, this behind-the-scenes examination provides a pulse-pounding glimpse into the precision and planning required to execute such an audacious operation. Every decision made hours before the sortie, from calculating drop tank fuel capacity to predicting German air patrol routes, had proven crucial, and the suspense is amplified as viewers realize that a single miscalculation could have turned the P-51's extraordinary range into a deadly liability. And yet the flawless execution demonstrated not only mechanical superiority, but also the meticulous preparation and ingenuity of Allied commanders. Inside the cockpits, pilots recounted every maneuver, every throttle adjustment, and every evasive roll with an intensity that conveyed both relief and awe. Their memories painted a vivid picture of the high-altitude dogfights, the rapid dive-and-climb sequences, and the disciplined formations that allowed them to strike deep into enemy territory while preserving fuel and maintaining tactical cohesion. And the narrative suspense is heightened because viewers experience the mission from both the human and technological perspective, understanding the stakes, the tension, and the extraordinary skill required for every mile flown over hostile skies. The Luftwaffe's response, analyzed through intercepted communications and historical accounts, further magnifies the drama. German pilots scrambled in confusion, with orders delayed or misinterpreted, formations breaking apart under the precision and surprise of the Mustang attacks, and anti-aircraft batteries firing at fleeting shadows, failing to neutralize the threat, creating a cinematic portrayal of chaos and desperation above Berlin, while American aircraft executed their strikes with the cool, calculated precision of an instrument, and the destruction of 80 fighters becomes a living, breathing spectacle of audacity, engineering, and human courage, designed to grip the audience at every moment. Technically, the narrative dives into the intricacies of the Mustang's engineering, how the laminar flow wing design minimized drag and maximized speed, allowing the long-range flight with minimal fuel consumption, how the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine maintained sustained high performance under extreme conditions, how carefully calculated drop tank deployment enabled the extra range necessary to reach Berlin and return safely, and how the aircraft's light yet durable frame provided both agility and survivability. And each of these technical details is woven into the suspenseful narrative to illustrate why the Mustang's 1,750-mile range was not merely impressive on paper, but operationally transformative. As dawn approached and pilots debriefed, the human element of endurance and fatigue became central to the story. Hours of high-intensity flying, combat stress, and navigation over enemy territory tested both mental and physical limits. And for viewers, this adds another layer of suspense and engagement, because the mission was not only a triumph of engineering but also a testament to the resilience, skill, and courage of the men behind the controls, whose ability to manage stress, maintain focus, and execute split-second decisions directly determined the success of the mission and survival of themselves and their aircraft. The operational implications for Allied strategy are then highlighted, further enhancing tension and awe. The Mustang's extraordinary range enabled bomber escorts deep into German territory, shifted the balance of air superiority, and forced the Luftwaffe to rethink defensive doctrines. And the narrative emphasizes that what had been a single daring operation would ripple through subsequent missions, shaping tactics, morale, and the very trajectory of the air war, creating a suspenseful, layered understanding for viewers that combines technical mastery, human endurance, and strategic genius. Finally, as the first point of the video reaches its conclusion, the audience is left suspended in anticipation. The 1,150-mile range of the P-51 had allowed an operation that stunned Germany, destroyed 80 Luftwaffe fighters, and demonstrated the deadly synergy of engineering brilliance, pilot skill, and strategic planning. And the cinematic tension is maintained through visuals of exhausted but triumphant pilots, gleaming aircraft on the tarmac, and the unfolding realization among Allied commanders that the rules of aerial warfare had been irreversibly changed, setting the stage for Point 2, where viewers will dive even deeper into the engineering, fuel management, and aerodynamic innovations that made such unprecedented operational reach possible, ensuring engagement and suspense remain at peak levels. As the last rays of sunlight faded over the tarmac, the P-51 Mustangs rested silently, gleaming under the soft glow of floodlights, yet the air vibrated with the echoes of a historic triumph, for the mission that had begun with audacious planning, meticulous calculations, and nerves of steel had reached its stunning conclusion. 80 Luftwaffe fighters obliterated, Berlin shocked into disbelief, and the extraordinary 1,650-mile range of the Mustangs fully realized in a display of engineering genius and pilot mastery that defied all expectations. And as the exhausted pilots climbed out of their cockpits, faces streaked with sweat and grime, logs brimming with data, and mechanics recording engine performance with reverent precision, the audience is left suspended in awe, fully aware that what they had witnessed was a perfect confluence of human skill, mechanical brilliance, and tactical audacity. A mission where every mile flown, every evasive maneuver, every calculated throttle adjustment had mattered, and where the line between vulnerability and dominance had been obliterated, leaving Germany stunned and the Allies emboldened. And the suspense reaches its peak as the camera pans across the aircraft, lingering on polished wings, jettisoned drop tanks, and exhausted crews, while the narrator's voice threads the final revelation that even a machine stretched to its limits can achieve the impossible in the hands of those who understand it. That audacity paired with precision can rewrite history, and that endurance, courage, and ingenuity combine to create a spectacle of warfare that will be remembered for generations, leaving viewers with their hearts racing, minds captivated, and a profound understanding of how the P-51 Mustang, through extraordinary range, lethal efficiency, and unparalleled piloting, reshaped the skies over Europe and delivered a lesson in audacity, strategy, and human ingenuity that no enemy could ignore.